Because make no mistake, you're going to sacrifice something. You're either sacrificing today for tomorrow, or you're sacrificing tomorrow for the moment right now. But if you've done a lot of it, I imagine that remembering a lot of the past stuff is also pretty difficult. How many of those parties can you remember? I don't know, how many times did you get totally wasted and you don't remember those parties? Wouldn't it be worse, by the way, if you have kids and you cannot remember their 8th birthday party? Or worse yet, wouldn't it be worse to forget to go to it? Because you were selling that television set. Maybe figure out what it is that's causing the suffering. Find out what it is that you're fleeing from and confront it heroically. Show up willingly, heroically, overcome it. And then there's a great thing. What's the last part of the hero? Anybody remember? What does the hero have to do after they're successful? Come back and tell us about it. So maybe you can come back and tell your kids about it. Here's how I overcame this thing of suffering in my life. Maybe you tell your friends that, your family that. And that way you're in a better position to help them. Rather than look at your kids who are suffering and go, I don't know how to help you. Or give some terrible advice. Some of the worst advice you can give. Just do what makes you happy. So what did we learn today? Don't do coke. Eat fewer Snickers bars. And confront the suffering of life. If anybody is able to detect a lie in anything I just said, please let me know.
No control over it. So whatever you're doing, it's like you're not being held accountable for it because you're drunk. Whatever you're doing is like...
So maybe drunkenness and is that lack of accountability that you're talking about there, perhaps that's the draw. It frees us from, we think it frees us from responsibility. So drunkenness is good because it frees us from responsibility. What's interesting is I have students who I talk to, I legitimately mean I'm thinking of a few people particularly, who will talk to me and they'll brag about how drunk they got over the weekend. And it's interesting, like they'll laugh, oh my God, I got so wasted, Scout, oh my God, it was so blah, blah. And I mentioned to one of them recently, I said, that's the only thing I've ever heard you brag about. Like I've never heard you brag about, oh Scout, you should see me perform on this test. Or Scout, you should see me in this competition. Or you should see me on the soccer field. In other words, that's the only thing they bragged about was the fact that they could drink a liquid. But there is no other accomplishment in their life that I've ever heard them brag about. And that doesn't mean that there is nothing else to brag about. I'm sure if we looked deeply and hard enough, we'd find something. Maybe we have to go back to 6th grade, but we'd find something that was worth bragging about. And if not, that might go to what you're saying, that we think that being drunk frees us from responsibility. And so that's the thing it represents. So if we understand it to be that, and then also pairing with what David said, obviously this is wider than just, being drunk. It's much broader than that. The feeling good was the ultimate judge. What else? Now we're getting somewhere, yeah.
I talked about in my notebook drunkenness and also feeling good, right? If feeling good was also like the standard of like living in general, we'd always be drunk. We'd always be doing careless things. We'd be free of responsibility. And we'd probably have the choice not to go anywhere or be at home and do whatever we want. We could probably shit and like throw it at someone and we wouldn't really care.
You don't do that?
I mean, I'm not a monkey.
Yeah, man, but sometimes the monkeys start crap at the zoo. You gotta fire back once in a while. I just saw this great video of a chimp who was throwing rocks at zoo visitors. And his mom got mad and came over and started hitting him with a branch. It was great. So it doesn't matter what kind of chimp we are. Mom still shows up. Yeah, I'm getting somewhere with that now. If just feeling good was the ultimate judge, then think about what we would do in our lives. I like this idea of drunkenness, though, because it ties so well to this idea of, just do what makes you happy. Do what makes you happy. How could you possibly know what makes you happy? Isn't that the thing that we're kind of like perpetually seeking? Is trying to find out what it is that makes us happy? And the things that we find, oftentimes, the things that make us feel happy are exactly the things that lead us headlong into harm. And so think about the kinds of things that make us happy. Drunkenness. Oh, I got so messed up. Would you brag about your dad when he does that on the weekends and then beats the shit out of you? You know, Dad, just do what makes you happy. I don't know. I wonder why we follow in those same footsteps. And we have people around us who are complete, utter failures in life. And I mean that not just in the sense of having accomplished nothing, I mean that in the sense of having never experienced things and having never felt things. And yet we imitate them in life. You know, I walk around here and I've got people who pretend to be working. And as soon as I walk up on him, I have people in here, I just saw somebody who went out to the bathroom and was hiding his cell phone. It's like, really, dude? You're going to hide your cell phone from me? What am I trying to change in your life? You're pretty well set already. And I'm not trying to change anyone's life. All I'm trying to do is stop you from interfering with people in here who are trying to do something well. So if you want to sit there and stare at your phone like a stump, well, go ahead. We already see where it leads. That's fine. It's not that I don't care about you. It's just that I can't fix you. I'm not trying to fix anybody. I'm trying to present an environment so that the people who do want to actually get something out of it aren't hindered. That's it. I'm not trying to make anybody in here a better person. I'm trying to stop you from making other people worse people. That's all it is. But think about the kinds of things that we do. You know, when we're left to our own devices, we hide our cell phones. My God, have you absolutely no courage or dignity in your life? Is that what your life has come to? You have to hide it underneath a desk. And you think anyone has any respect for it. You don't even respect yourself. You have to hide something like that. Think about how silly and ridiculous that is. Like that's what your life has come to. And then if that's really what it's not just that you're doing that. It's more than that. It's that that's what you think about yourself. And if that's what you think about yourself, if you realize that you're such an utterly weak coward and you have no power control of your own life, well then my goodness, it's no surprise that you're failing everything else. I don't mean that in the sense of a person being stupid. I mean that in the sense of a person feeling like they have no control over their own lives. That they have to actually hide something like that. Well my goodness, if you feel like you have no control over your own life, why try? Why bother giving it any effort? And this is why I don't get upset with students, because I figure that has to come from somewhere. There's something in your life that has made you feel like you have to do that. It makes you feel like you can't really accomplish. I don't know if that's because we're surrounded by people who haven't really accomplished. Oftentimes we're surrounded by people who are disappointed in us for not being more. But of course, why aren't we oftentimes more? Because we're not surrounded by people who are more. In other words, that's not the standard that we see. The standard of achievement and excellence that we see is so far outside of our experiences that we don't think it relates to us at all. Instead, we look at what's around us and we rise to that very mediocre level. Of course, we don't even achieve that very mediocre level. We sink below that even. And then we have parents and family and friends who yell at us, "Why aren't you better?" I don't know. Why aren't I better? What am I not seeing in my life that would make me believe that I could be better or could achieve more? I know I'm being abstract here. I'll bring it more center. Think about the things in your life that make you feel good. The foods we eat, things that we do in our free time. And by the way, there's no such thing as free time. There's lifetime. There's no downtime. There's no free time. There's no off time. There's only lifetime. You aren't allotted any of these things any more than the other. What you decide to make of it is what you decide to make of it. You'll find that people who take their free time and make it work time tend to excel and do better in life. You know, I was just talking about a friend of mine. I don't remember if it was in this class. I apologize if it was. It's not that Chili. It's a different Chili. Right? The guy who I named Chili after. He got kicked out of this school, and he never graduated from high school. He works construction right now. And he was going to, he would show up to the job site early, and he would follow the foreman around to find out what the foreman did. And he would stay late afterwards to watch the foreman do all the closing paperwork and stuff, and he would find out how to do that stuff. And Chili's I think Chili's now like 28, 29 years old. And the people who he worked with were giving him a bunch of grief over this, and just like, dude, you're so stupid, you're such a kiss-ass, you're working for free, you're stupid. And he would continue to do it. And now those same guys who were saying that about him are now working for him. He got his first foreman's job. So the guy's in his late 20s working a job that people don't usually get until they're like mid-late 30s. And why did he do that? Because he wasn't concerned about just feeling good. He wasn't concerned about just clocking out, going home and drinking like most of the people who he works with do. And I really do mean that. There's something about that group that's what they do. He was a person who saw that there was something that was more, because he has people around him who he can kind of model himself after. Not to be like them, but to achieve like them. In other words, he sees its possibility. And so he wasn't concerned with just feeling good. He's concerned about his life later on down the road, so he has the ability to project himself into the future, which a lot of us don't have. And so it's neat. Like I said, the guy's in his late 20s, and now he's working a job, 7 to 10 years ahead of what his age actually is. So was he the stupid one to put that time and effort in? No. No, he gave up what he gave up today for the hope of a better tomorrow. And that's what it really is about. It's about giving up today. It's about giving up this moment. I've got this thing in my hand right now, which I could enjoy, which I could do something with. But if I don't do it, maybe there's something better on down the road. And that's the really hard part. It's that maybe there's something better down the road. You don't know. If you have a cheeseburger in your hand right now, 2 cheeseburgers in your hands right now, and you eat both cheeseburgers, and you might sit there and think like, well, if I eat like this every day, then in 30 years or 20 years ever, I'm going to have high cholesterol, heart problems, and diabetes. But you know what? Fuck it, YOLO. I may not make it 20 years. What if I get hit by a car tomorrow and you eat all the cheeseburgers? But then here's what's strange. Typically, you're going to make it those 20 years. Most people do. Very few people die in these weird circumstances, like when someone gets hit by a car. Most people don't die that way. Most people die way later in life with all kinds of health problems because they didn't take care of themselves when they were younger. Why? Because YOLO. And if it's true that you only live once, then quit wasting the life that you have right now. There's 2 ways of seeing that. YOLO, screw it, who cares? Tomorrow's promised to no one. Or there's YOLO. I only live once. I better not screw this up, because if tomorrow doesn't come, then today didn't matter anyway. So I might as well make the most of today by projecting myself and making the most of tomorrow, preparing myself for that tomorrow. Especially if you guys plan to have families, if you guys plan to have kids. It's not just about you. It's about the kids that haven't been born yet. It's about preparing yourself. I mean, think about that, how I kind of began this thing by saying that, a lot of us don't have role models to, not to be like, but to achieve like. In other words, to see that it's possible. And many of us, don't achieve because because we're allowed to have a kind of certain disdain for our parents. Like, well, you didn't do much, so why do you expect me to? Because they love you and they want better for you. Something that you probably can understand for your friends, maybe, that you want better for your friends, perhaps. But this is so much deeper when it comes from your parents. Your parents want so much more for you. I don't know about you guys, but my parents sacrificed a lot for me. Way too much for me to be mediocre. I don't know. Maybe you have parents have it. Maybe it's just up to you. But many of you probably is that case. And so what they do is you prepare yourself now, because at some point you're going to have those kids. And if those kids can look at you and say, oh wow, my parents did achieve, my parents did do these things, it's so much easier for you to expect those things out of your kids if you did them yourself. And at some point, some of you are going to have kids who are going to be in school, and maybe they're going to be working hard, but that's the thing. Are you going to have the I don't know, the moral, I'm not sure what the word's going to be here, but you have the moral authority to tell them you should work hard. Why? Because I did. Or you have to say, I want you to work harder than I did. Because you won't even know how, because you didn't do it in the first place. How can you possibly teach someone to do something that you didn't do yourself? And so you do. Why? Not for yourself. Whatever. If you don't care about yourself, fine. But if you're going to have kids someday, I hope you care about them. Is that what you're going to be? Feeling good? Is that how we plan to live our lives? Just to feel good? If feeling good was the ultimate measurement, none of us would be here today. We'd be laying in bed still. Wasn't it warm this morning? Anybody have trouble getting out of bed this morning because it was so cold out and so warm inside the bed and comfortable? Yeah. You've had your quota of rest. You have. Have you had your quota of work? You've probably had your quota of eating. Have you had your quota of sacrifice and taking on responsibilities? And I don't mean responsibilities in the sense that we expect this from you. I mean you expect things from yourself. I mean, that's probably the really dark hole that's hard to climb out of, when we have no responsibilities. In other words, we've taken on nothing voluntarily, and we don't expect anything from ourselves. And if you expect nothing from yourself, by the way, there's a really good upside to that. If you expect nothing from yourself, well then who cares if you fail? And if you fail to achieve anything? If you fail to become better? If you fail to learn? If you fail to grow? Who cares? There's no expectation in the first place. But if you do have, the downside of course to that is that, well now you're not going to achieve. You're not going to do anything great because you don't expect these things from yourself, which means you don't drive yourself. You don't put yourself in the position to achieve something great. On the other side of the coin, you can expect a lot out of yourself. And there's a downside to that, a lot of responsibility. And again, it's not responsibility that anybody puts onto you. It's responsibility that you take on to yourself voluntarily. And there's something heroic about that. And by the way, that's what having a family is. That's what getting married is. It's taking on a responsibility to yourself to be a spouse. Not just when it feels good, but because you accept the responsibility voluntarily and you stay with the commitment. Why? Not because it feels good, but because it's the right thing to do. Being a parent, not just when it feels good, not just doing what feels good. Don't many of us have that complaint about our parents already? Yeah. What it really is you take on the responsibility to become that thing, to become a parent, and be the best possible parent. Not, no one's perfect and accept these things from ourselves, but to strive towards perfection. Because the more you strive towards perfection, the closer you get. If you strive towards perfection and you only get 80%, that's pretty damn good. If you aim for 50%, you get, what, 35%? That's not so good. Expect more of yourself. Why? Because you can achieve more. And because, isn't that kind of what, at the end of everything, what makes it a meaningful, useful life? Where's that meaning to be found? Is it to be found on a two-dimensional screen? Maybe. I don't know. I'm not judging your life. I hope you're not judging mine. But at some point, you're going to have to reckon with that. Is that what you would want for your kids? Is that what you'd want for people you love and care about? Just to stare at that and feel good. Because again, what makes most of us feel happy, not happy, what makes many of us feel happy is exactly what leads us straight into harm. And so, maybe the point of this is to reorient what feels good. Do you guys know about gut bacteria? You guys know about gut bacteria? Gut bacteria is a really strange thing. You have this bacteria that lives inside of your gut, hence why it's called gut bacteria, yeah. And it actually is what creates your cravings. So if you eat a lot of sugary foods, your gut bacteria gets used to that, and then guess what you desire? Sugary foods. So what you have to do is you have to reset your gut. Probiotics, if you take the right ones, they can do that. And what ends up happening is that over time, you can actually change the desires from your gut bacteria, which will actually make you want different kinds of foods. So you can get yourself off of sugary foods and onto healthier foods. It takes taking on responsibility, it takes a lot of work, but over time, what that means is you will no longer feel good by downing 3 Snickers bars, which I can do easily. I'm willing to prove it. If you bring in 3 Snickers bars, I'll prove it to you. In other words, you reorient what feeling good is. It's not just downing 3 Snickers bars. It's not just doing whatever you want. In fact, you can change feeling good to taking on responsibility, fulfilling, not just taking responsibility, but fulfilling a responsibility. Because that's exactly what leads to achievement. Where is the achievement in getting, like I began with by explaining that my student who gets drunk and brags about getting drunk, but doesn't brag about any other achievement in his life? Is that really the thing at the end of your life you're going to brag about when you're dying from your cirrhosis of the liver at 45 years old? Is that what you want to brag about? Man, as I'm connected to this machine, as this dialysis has cleaned my blood, I got fucked up. Oh my God, it's so cool. Now, I imagine you're probably going to sit there and look at your family around you, God willing. Look at your family around you and say, I would give all of that for just 10 more minutes with these kids. The thing about it is we oftentimes excuse it and just say, oh, I don't want to think about that. I know. But isn't that exactly what separates successful people from unsuccessful people? Successful people are willing to do the things that unsuccessful people aren't willing to do. Chili is willing to go to the job site early and stay late and not get paid for it. And that's exactly what leads to his success. It's that willingness to do the things that other people aren't willing to do. That's the strange thing about us as humans, that there are things that many people rise over, which other people just kind of put down. What is it that makes one person not the first one? What makes someone the second person? You know, lots of personality, blah, 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 blah. But what it really is it's the willingness and the effort to actually do it. And so, if feeling good could decide, being drunk would be a supremely valid human experience. I wonder if any of us are really proud of our parents when they get wasted. I wonder how many of us get really proud of people who do stuff like that, who only pursue that momentary joy and sacrifice the future for today. Because make no mistake, you're going to sacrifice something. You're either sacrificing today for tomorrow, or you're sacrificing tomorrow for the moment right now. It's your choice. It really is. And I wouldn't tell you what to do. I don't know. Wouldn't it be terrible if you didn't eat that cheeseburger and then tomorrow you get hit by the car and that's your last thought? I wish I ate that cheeseburger. I don't know. But if anybody is able to detect a lie in anything I just said, please let me know. Questions, comments, concerns, complaints, criticisms, critiques? Happy Tuesday.
With the drunken thing, I kind of went a step further and say that feeling good is just temporary, and I use the example of using drugs. If you use drugs, yes, it does feel good temporarily.
How would you know?
History guy.
It does leave you with an addicting feeling of you want to feel this feeling, so you keep doing it over and over again. And once you might sacrifice everything just to get that temporary good feeling. Until you're done.
Yeah, no, I was thinking about that too, because going back to what Christine was saying about how being drunk feels good because you lose control. And that's something people will say. By the way, having said that, like I've said, full disclosure, I've never been drunk before. I've only had alcohol once in my life. I drank a lot of it. I was over in England. I lived in England for a little bit. But I didn't get drunk. Maybe tipsy might be. But then again, I don't know. Maybe I was drunk and didn't realize it because I have no point of reference. So, but if it's true that we like drinking because we have that sense of a loss of control, and therefore we have no responsibilities. Are you responsible for what you do when you're drunk?
Yes.
Probably.
Of course.
Yes.
Of course. Does anybody just sit there and go, he was just drunk? Yeah, people do that. But, I don't know. Any of you guys ever start a Fortune 500 company while you were wasted? Has anybody ever just gotten totally, fucked up, went to Vegas, forgot the weekend, came back and was like, wait a second, I started a company?
Yeah, that's all me.
I started a successful import-export company? That doesn't happen. But going back to what you're saying right now, it's interesting. So if you really want to lose control, if you really like that thing of losing control, cocaine, man. Heroin, yeah. You'll be completely out of control. You'll sit there and you'll be so out of control that you'll be doing strange things for cheeseburgers. If you know, you know.
Hey, yo, what do you mean by that?
You've seen the movie. But there's a complete loss of control. Sitting there, you can't control anything about yourself. Anybody sit there and see a heroin addict who's just freaking out in the corner and just be like, man, someday, if I shoot enough smack, that's going to be me. Yeah, fingers crossed. I work really hard. Is that what you want to? How many of us sit there and look at a successful business person and go, someday? Or how many of us look at Elon Musk and we're like, oh man, I don't ever want to be like that. Where's the heroin?
That's some people.
No, really? You think people seriously sit there and say, I don't want to be successful like Elon Musk, I'd rather be a heroin addict?
Yeah.
That's why no one likes you, AJ.
Oh yeah, I know.
Because it's not
what you want.
No, you don't know what you don't know. Being contrarian gets us nowhere. Yes.
I had a substitute teacher in math tell me that college wasn't worth it because the college experience was just getting drunk.
Well, that's the thing. For a lot of people, it is.
You went to state, yeah.
Yeah, go to state. Yeah.
That's all he did.
Yeah.
So I didn't. I never got the point of alcohol.
Really?
Yeah, no, I never had the urge.
Are you a dancer? Alcohol can fix that. Alcohol makes everyone a dancer. This is part of the problem, man. Like, do drugs feel good? Okay, don't do drugs. Right? Right?
Are you still recording?
Don't do drugs. All of you at home watching this. But, hear me out.
That's going on the playlist. That's going on the playlist.
They-
Please edit this out.
Yeah.
Please.
No, I got something to say. The world needs to hear this. Having said that, they exist for a reason. You know, do candy bars taste good? Yes. Why? They exist for a reason. People love them. You know, if you sit there and go like, man, don't eat Snickers bars because, you know, long term they're gonna mess you up. We all know this, but they taste good right now, don't they? There's a line I guess you get to where, I mean, it's like I've talked about. If any of you know somebody who has diabetes, think about that. There was like some cheeseburger that if they had just stopped right there, they could have walked themselves back from diabetes. But there was one cheeseburger that was too far. The problem is you never know which one is too far. So far, so good. Okay, don't do drugs. Having said that, at some point you could be doing cocaine, which I understand is a hell of a drug. But at some point you're going to end up going too far, and then you become an addict. Which rail is too far? I'm sorry, which line of cocaine is too far? I don't know. Maybe it's the first one, maybe it's the 9th one. I don't know. But again, I imagine if you find yourself doing strange things for cheeseburgers, at that point you're going to know you've gone too far. The line is back there somewhere. I think I just ran past that line. You know, you're going to find yourself in county, waking up in a holding cell and be like, I guess maybe I went too far. I guess the line's back there somewhere. And then now the real problem is you have to put all of this time and effort into trying to get sober. And not just get sober, but stay sober. Many of you guys know people who are recovering addicts. You know that staying sober is a full-time job in itself for a lot of people. Now that's time and effort that you cannot put into starting your company or doing whatever it is that would make you achieve a hell of a lot more. In other words, it's something that absolutely pulls away from your life. Do drugs and alcohol feel great? I understand that they do. I've seen lots of drunk people and high people having a great time. Absolutely. And that's part of the problem is that we lie about it and say, no, it's bad. Yeah, of course it's terrible for you. So are Snickers bars. And I'm not saying cocaine's the same as Snickers bars. I'm not saying it's very different, but I'm not saying it's the same thing either. And so, yeah, if your whole goal in life is to feel good, but I don't know how good you feel about yourself. When you sit there and you look at the mirror and you're trying to figure out what you've become because you've wrecked your family and you've destroyed everybody around you, you've had to sell off your television set to buy Coke. I'm not sure how good we feel about ourselves. We can look back on it, and by the way, if you've done it, don't do it. But if you've done a lot of it, I imagine that remembering a lot of the past stuff is also pretty difficult. How many of those parties can you remember? I don't know, how many times did you get totally wasted and you don't remember those parties? Wouldn't it be worse, by the way, if you have kids and you cannot remember their 8th birthday party? Wouldn't that be a worse party to forget?
Yeah.
Or worse yet, wouldn't it be worse to forget to go to it? Because you were selling that television set. I don't know. Whatever, I mean, life is suffering. And this is why people do that stuff, because it helps us to cope with the suffering of life. The thing is that it's not really dealing with the thing that causes the suffering, though. So maybe figure out what the cause of the suffering is, and attack that. Find a meaning, find a purpose. Don't find an escape. You know, sometimes in life, you find yourself in a room with someone and you're having to fight. You can fight in the room, or you can run for the exit. You know? I don't know. Too often times you run for the exit. The problem is, you know what's on the other side of the exit? Another room. Because you don't really escape it until you finally escape it. And then, of course, at that point, it's too late to do anything about it. So, maybe fight. Figure out what it is that's causing the suffering. Find out what it is that you're fleeing from, and confront it heroically. Don't wear armor when you're fighting the dragon. Remember that. Don't wear armor when you fight the dragon. Show up willingly, heroically, overcome it. And then there's a great thing. What's the last part of the hero? Anybody remember? What does the hero have to do after they're successful?
Die.
No. Better. Come back and tell us about it. So maybe you can come back and tell your kids about it. Here's how I overcame this thing of suffering in my life. Maybe you can tell your friends that, your family that. And that way you're in a better position to help them. Rather than look at your kids who are suffering and go, I don't know how to help you. Or give some terrible advice. Some of the worst advice you can give. Just do what makes you happy. Others. Once again, man, happy Tuesday. So what did we learn today? Don't do coke. Eat fewer Snickers bars. And confront the suffering of life.
Eat one less cheeseburger.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Cheeseburger.
Don't die.
God damn it.
Eat more cheeseburgers. Go ahead and put
Okay,
them
but
up.
does killing someone count someone as like dying?
For them.
Okay, so we're good.
Yeah. Maybe next period I'll talk about the importance of dying. Not literally.
Figuratively.
Figuratively.